Hi everyone, how's everyone doing? My name's Marianne, the owner and the counsellor at Marianne Hanson Counselling Service. So as you're aware, I'm doing these book reviews. This is book number 11 and it's called The Art of Loving by Erich Fromm. So let me know what you've been thinking about my book review so far. Let me know what's your favourite book, and also thank you for the recommendations. I have actually got at least 20 books in my Amazon basket, and I'm ordering a few at a time, so I will be continuing to do reviews every Monday throughout the whole of 2023. So this book, I'm just going to read you the back so it gives you an idea of what the book's about. So it's saying it's a classic, inspiring thousands of people with its clarity and power. Erich Fromm, the renowned psychoanalyst, sees love as the ultimate need and desire of all human beings. In this book, he discusses every aspect of the subject: romantic love, the love of parents for children, brotherly love, erotic love, self-love, and the love of God and or the divine. So it's saying he's one of the major figures in the field of psychoanalysis. I shouldn't know how to pronounce these words as I'm a counsellor. He devoted himself to consultant psychology and theoretical investigation for many years. He's also written other books which include Fear of Freedom, Psychoanalysis and Zen, and he died in 1980. But this book was definitely on my book list when I was a counsellor, but I've never read it. So I've not taken loads of notes, but I'm just going to read a few of the things that I got from the book. So the book looks at the theory and practice of love, the history of love, society's perception of love, and love as a discipline rather than an emotion. So what I like about it is, obviously it's called The Art of Loving, so it describes love as, instead of just an emotion or instead of something that we just fall into or we just do, he says you have to study it in the same way that you study other things. In order to be good at loving yourself and loving others, you need to study it, you need to understand it. So it says that if love is an art, then it requires knowledge and effort. So it says most people see the problem of love as that of being loved rather than loving others. So they don't look at their capacity to love other people. They look at why don't people love me, or why am I unlovable, or how can I get people to love me? So he says if you switch that around and you work on your capacity to love other people, and that includes in the book it talks about parental love towards their children, unconditional love to like your brother, your sister, not your biological, but just everyone in the world, viewing them as brothers, sisters. He says that will then make you understand love and also receive love as well. So he says what makes a person attractive depends on what is considered fashionable at the time. So two people fall in love when they feel they have found the best object available on the market. This was written so many years ago, but it's so right for the times. It's right for these times because it is. You've got all these dating sites. You've got Tinder, which is, to me, I don't really call that a dating site, because you're literally on an app and you're going right, left, based on things like, all you can really see, I mean, I've not been on Tinder, but I know that all you can really see is the profile of the person. So you're going on looks and maybe their age, and that's about it, and where they live. You don't really get a full profile. Some dating apps, I mean, because 1 in 3 people meet people online at the moment. So, and I've also met people online in the past. eHarmony I've been on. Where else? Elite Singles. I've met people on both of those sites. So I'm not going to say dating sites are not useful. But what he's saying really is that all people do when they're seeking love in that sense is they're looking at the best on the market. So it's about selling yourself. It's about, yes, that person has all the things that I need. But he says that isn't really love, because real love, and I agree with that as well, is once you've got past all the packaging and the marketing and all the chat and all the things that, yeah, I can do this and I can give you this, and what are you bringing to the table? If you can't literally just sit in a room with that person who you're supposed to love and just do everyday things, or you just don't feel that connection, then nothing else is going to matter. It's not going to matter what they look like. It's not going to matter how much they earn. If there's nothing there between the two of you, and if there's no love, then it's not going to last. So the book speaks about the difference between falling in love and being in love, because he says we use those terms a lot, but there's a big difference because I mean, he goes into detail, but I didn't get that far, so I can't even expand on it myself. But he just talks about the differences. And there's a quote in the book that says, "There is hardly any activity which is started with such tremendous hopes and expectations and yet fails so regularly as love. One way to overcome this is to examine the reasons and study the meaning of love." So he says, you know, which is true. We all have expectations of what love means for us. We all have hopes and dreams about like falling in love most of the time, or someone loving us. And he says it fails because of our expectations and because of the hopes. It doesn't fail because it doesn't come true. It's because people don't really understand what the meaning of love is. And I think if you try to have, I think, intellectual discussions about love, no one's interested, because people will just be like, oh, love is an emotion. Oh, you can't define it. You can't describe it. Oh, it's just how you feel. You can't help who you fall in love with. I mean, the amount of groups I used to be a member of on Facebook where it's relationship groups, and they'd all be saying, my heart is broken. And someone said, actually, I remember this, someone said that they would always love their ex. So there was lots of people which would keep saying, no matter who I date in the future, I will always love my ex. And then when people were replying and saying, well, what's the point in being in a new relationship if you're still holding on to those feelings for your old relationship? The person would say, well, if you don't continue to love your ex, it means you didn't love them in the first place. And I just thought, I personally feel that's a ridiculous concept, because you can love someone and you can be completely in love with that person when you're in a relationship. You don't just leave the relationship and then it switches off. But if you're going to continue to love that person for the rest of your life, when you're moving forward into a new relationship, what's the point of that? If you're holding on to that strong emotion for another person, you might as well be with that person. You know, we can, as human beings, make a decision about love, and that would mean that we're giving our all to the person that we're with. So yeah, for me, I didn't really get that. I understand that you can't switch things on and off, but I don't understand this idea that someone is actually proud or wanting to hold on to love of a person they're no longer with, because why don't you just be with them then? And it says the deepest need of man is to overcome his separateness, to leave the prison of his aloneness. Where am I? He is confronted by the question of how to achieve union. So he says that lots of people only get into relationships or only get married to escape from being alone. So he says that they're not really doing it because they love the person or they want to be with the person. It's because they want to escape the idea of being by themselves. Now that's shifted a little bit, because there's lots of articles online and lots of discussions where people are choosing to be single. I mean, that people have got different reasons. Some people it's fear, some people it's financial, some people are just choosing that. That's both men and women. But in most cases, people don't like the idea of being alone or like the idea of separateness. For me personally, I feel I go either way. So I can, when I'm around too many people too much of the time and I'm trying to work out, you know, it's just too much effort, too much energy, I then like to just be by myself. But when I spend too much time by myself, I do crave like being around other people. So I like the balance. I don't always get the balance because mostly I'm working. But yeah, I don't like this idea of I wouldn't ever use a relationship to escape from being alone, because that person then has got to fill that hole, and it's not their job to do that. So it talks about the difference between neurotic love, which is where someone avoids their problems and they project. So neurotic, if you think about it, neurosis is like on the level of insanity, but it's also where you are constantly worrying about things, you're constantly anxious. So if you have this anxious love, this neurotic love, it means you are avoiding your problems, you're projecting everything into the other person. This probably falls in with people who have insecure attachments. So that person has to constantly give them validation. They can't be away from that person. They're very clingy. If that person doesn't text them 20 times a day, they think something's wrong with them. So that's neurotic love versus pseudo love, which is sentimental. So he says that is the idea of, it's real, deep, meaningful love. It means something to you. So there's just a few chapters in here which I just want to touch on. I've put a little note on here. So it talks about, if we believe that love is an art, then it requires knowledge and effort. If it's just a pleasant sensation and it's a matter of chance that someone falls into, then it means that you have to be lucky. But the book, it says, is about the premise, the premise of the idea of you need to understand what love is, you need to read about it, you need to study it. That's what he's saying. So not that people think that love is important, they are starved for it. They watch endless numbers of films about happy and unhappy love stories. They listen to hundreds of trashy songs about love, yet hardly anyone thinks that there is anything that needs to be learnt. So that's a good point, really. And then the other bit that I saw in here, one of the chapters, this is about love and its disintegration in contemporary Western society. If love is a capacity of the mature, productive character, it follows that the capacity to love in an individual living in any given culture depends on the influence this culture has on the character of the average person. So all that really means, because he does sort of, what I have said is it is a difficult read at times, because he does use, it's not about using big words. I'm not like, I can understand big words and things, but when I'm reading a book, I just want people to get to the point. And I do think sometimes he does go on and on and on. With that sentence, what he's really trying to say is, depending on the culture and society you live in, will have a massive impact on how you view love and relationships. I completely agree, because if you go to some countries and you see how couples operate, or how the standard for marriage is, or how families operate, that is built on the society that they're living in, that is built on the government that's there that allows families to thrive. Then in other countries that you're living in, there's no incentive for people to become a family or stay together. Lots of people will say it's easier if I live by myself. There's no consideration or as much to a loving relationship, because it's all about, how many partners you can be with, how much people you can have children with, how much. I'm not saying that this is true of any country. I'm saying that in some countries, where things are promoted in a particular way, then that will have a massive impact on how people enter into relationships. And I don't think there should be a judgment either way, but I just think sometimes we don't sit back and think of why are we behaving in the way that we are. Is it because that's what we really want? Do we really want to have a different partner every night? Or is it just that all our friends are doing that, or society promotes that through the media, through the programs it's showing us, and deep down we want a loving relationship? So I gave this book 7.5 out of 10. I found it interesting, but I found it hard to digest in parts. It's a very intriguing topic, and I think it's interesting as well. The way that the book is quite thin, if you look at it, it's only got 5 chapters, and then they're broken down into sections. So each chapter has different subtitles. So it's The Art of Loving by Erich Fromm. It's an international bestseller. And yeah, 7.5 out of 10 isn't too bad. I think if I'd understood some of the concepts in a deeper way, I've had to sort of read the stuff and then interpret it myself. And it was a lot of thinking power. And sometimes I just want to read and I want to get it. There's certain books I've given 9 or 10 to where it's like I'm reading, can't put the book down, and I just get it straight away. But with this one, yeah, it's a good book. I'm not going to say it isn't. So yeah, if you're interested in this type of thing, then check it out. So thanks for watching, and feel free to share this video if you feel other people will benefit. Leave your tips on what books you feel I should read, and also leave your comments about how interested you are in this book and whether you'd buy it yourself. Thanks for watching. Bye.